Greetings, Internet, and welcome to Aaron Plays, and I hope you're doing fantastically well. This will be the beginning of my playthrough of Scenario 20 from Ghost Panzer, which is part of the Banner Brothers franchise game group, whatever you want to call it, where you've got Screaming Eagles, then you've got Ghost Panzer, then they did Texas Arrows, then there was the Japanese one, the Old Breed, then there was a new one, which is Stalin's Favorites, which I've got on order. So, Scenario 20 is the first scenario of Ghost Panzers which has combined arms, and that's what my opponent Pierre would like to play. I put an advert up on Board Game Geek for someone to play Ghost Panzer, and he responded. I asked which scenario he would like to do, and this is the one he suggested. We can't remember how we dice for size, but anyway, I ended up I'm the Soviets. So I did a Soviet setup, sent it to him, and then he began the actual game. So using Vassal, and we're using Warhorse Simulations Axe dice for die rolls because we're not using the dice from the Vassal bot because I don't like them. I might have mentioned that before. If you've watched any of my other videos in Ambush and such forth, I use real dice. That's a bit difficult with an opponent, but Axe works quite nicely. So, well, that's enough jibber jabber. If you could do the pay your rent, as in likes, much appreciate, all helps the channels. Subscribe if you haven't done so and you do like what I do, and also any comments much appreciated because they all help spread the word. And there's a bloody annoying fly, but there we go. What can you do about springtime? Anyway, moving down to the board, let's see what's going on. Okay, let's set the scene. So it's Scenario 20, the Bloody Triangle, Dubno, June 25th, 1941. So a couple of days after the start of Operation Barbarossa. Although unknown to them at the time, the 11th Panzer Division had become the point of the spear in the largest tank battle in history to that point. In some ways, it was like the first cursed. This week-long battle, referred to by some as the Bloody Triangle, would involve about 700 German tanks and armoured cars versus over 5,000 Soviet, more than 700 of which were the T-34s and KV-1s, almost half of what had been produced. Dubno became an important part of that battle and was attacked almost by accident in a pincer move. The 231st Recon Battalion and the 110th Panzer Grenadier Regiment coming from the north and the south. Despite an attempt to reinforce Dubno with tanks, it was to be in vain. The Germans were clear all of Dubno by shortly afternoon. The lead elements of the 11th Panzer were already moving deeper into Soviet territory. So this is a standard scenario card you get with Banner Brothers. You have the map set up over here. I wonder if I can do the... No, it's got to be... There we go. The map set up. The victory conditions. So the German player wins if at any time, so it's not at the end of the game, at any time, there are no Russian squads, weapon teams, or guns. Vehicles do not prevent a German win on the whole hex of board 18. That's the middle board there. Special rules. The German artillery may place smoke, which it normally can't do, and unit may mount half tracks during the scenario. Again, it's not a special rule for this particular scenario. Force exchanges. The Russians may exchange 3 squads from their at-start forces for 2 decoys and 145mm anti-tank gun. Now, they start with 1 anti-tank gun, 5 decoys, 3 weapon teams, 11 squads, 4 foxholes. Reinforcements coming on turn 4, a T-34. T-26s, I'm not going to go to the air, whatever. And 5 more squads. The Germans are coming on with a Panzer IV, short barrel. You've then got a 37mm anti-gun and an 88. 2 half tracks to carry those anti-tank guns. Some squads which will be marked concealed, and a a weapons team. The reason why they're marked concealed, right? So I'm playing this in observer mode, so both sides units that will be coming on will be concealed until revealed. The reason being, I don't want you guys seeing what my setup is, because me and Pierre are actually still playing this game, and he might decide to want to watch this video. We're only on to turn 4, and this video I'm going to try and do turns 1, 2, and 3. So I don't want him to see what my setup, but also I don't want you to see it, so it's a bit of a surprise what actually comes out. As I say, I'm playing the Soviet. But he's got effectively 5 squads and a weapons team coming on turn 1 from the southern edge, which is down here. And then from the northern edge, he's got, oh, lots of scenario notes. There we go. Panzer II, some half tracks, 6 of them, carrying 5 squads and a weapon team. And as I say, he's got some artillery. So that's the situation. Let's have a look at what my setup is. So that's the boards. Now I could zoom in a bit on that. Okay. Right. So his aim is he's got to get kill or destroy all the Soviet units on this board here. Anti-tank guns, infantry, weapons teams, doesn't have to worry about armor. Okay. So that's, and I've got some guys on the adjacent board over here to try and close down what's Germans are coming on from the north side of the board. So, with that in mind, my reinforcements are coming on from the east, which is over here on turn 4. So, got to hold on until relieved. With Vassal and logs, there was quite a few back and forth. So what I've done is amalgamated the logs, and then sometimes you'll see it go back a little bit and forward a bit, but I'll explain it as we're going through. So the Germans are coming on from this map edge. Let's zoom out a little bit. There we go. You can see my southern part of the village defense. And I'm going to talk our way through. So as he said, he's going to do some recon first. So he brings on a concealed dude. You can see little footprint shows that they're moving. And then he's asking if I got any reaction to that. And that's when I realize, he says you can see that unit. He flashes it because it's in the open. And that was an error on my behalf. When I was doing the setup, I had these foxholes and I had them in a foxhole dug in on the road. And then I removed the foxhole. I forgot to move him. So yeah, we all make mistakes. Yeah, I forgot to move him elsewhere. Obviously an unpopular guy. He wasn't given the instruction that he was meant to garrison a building. So anyway, he decides to bring artillery in. Artillery brought in Band of Brothers is fairly easy. It's a lot easier than something like ASL and a few other systems I can think of, but you effectively have what's called a proficiency number. Now let me bring up the scenario sheet again. So we look at the little counter over here, and it says artillery, and it's got a proficiency number of 8 and accuracy of 7. So he's got everything's on a D10, nearly everything, 90% of everything, in fact, 99%. Anyway, he's got proficiency of 8. He has to roll 8 or below for the radio contact to be established, and then he has to roll 7 or below for accuracy. And any squad unit can bring this in. You don't need a particular artillery observer. They're all assumed, I suppose, to have either radios or contact to someone who's got a radio. And that proficiency and accuracy will depend on how effective the artillery is on that day. That's, on a different day, on a different scenario, that proficiency and accuracy could be totally different. But it'll be still the 100mm artillery. So to bring it in, you must roll an 8 and then an accuracy of 7. So scrolling through, it wasn't accurate. And it scatters 1 hex, and you wanted to bring smoke in. So he brought smoke in there, as the scenario allows him to do. If it didn't mention that in the special rules, he wouldn't be allowed to bring in smoke. There would have to be an HE. Right. More infantry arriving. And because these are moving in the open, he's revealed them. and then they're going to do an assault fire. Right. Okay. So let's explain that. Infantry that move can also fire, and they fire with, if you look at the counter, let me zoom in there. All right. So you can see there are a fair amount of numbers at the bottom there. So let's go through them. One looks under like a starburst at 6-5 is their firepower. The next 6 is their range, and the 4-7 is their casualty number. The 6-5, if they weren't moving or weren't doing anything, they would be firing with a firepower of 6 if they just fired. If they moved or opportunity fired, they'd be firing with their proficiency firepower, which is at 5 value. Again, up to a range of 6. So comparing that to my dudes, yeah, I've got a 4 firepower and a 1 proficiency. They're not very good at firing on the move or opportunity fire or anything like that. In fact, they're rubbish. Range of 4 and the 3-6 casualties. I'll explain that when it's necessary. The other values down the side, the 10, 6, 1. 10 is their unsuppressed morale. 6 is their suppressed morale. And the 1 is their fully suppressed morale. Everything you do for the infantry requires a morale check, but because most infantry start with a 10, it's automatic. But as soon as they become suppressed, they'll be trying to roll on the 6 to actually do something. And if they're fully suppressed, they'll require a 1. Again, on a D10. Low is good, high is bad. So anyway, he's firing on that unit there. Marked up used. Okay, so I actually resolved his shot there. So it's firepower of 5, which we went through there. That's the proficiency firepower. -1 for the smoke because he's firing through his own smoke. -1 for me being concealed, and -1 for the unit in the woods. So net -3. So he has to roll equal to or less than the adjusted firepower, which is again it's 5 -1 becomes a 2. So what did he roll? 2 required, roll of a 6, so that has no effect. If he'd have rolled the 2, that would have restricted the concealment and would have suppressed my unit. More units coming in. And they come out of the smoke, and I thought, okay. Fires again. Now, I could be firing here, but considering this is where he outranges me and he's got better firepower, if I actually fired from this unit to this guy moving, okay, who's moving in the open, like, ooh, I'm here, I'd only be firing with a fire value of 1, my proficiency firepower, and then it's 1, 2, 3, 4 for moving in the open. Right, so let me just show you how this works. Okay, so he'd be moving in the open, moving in open ground, so that's on here. It's sorry, range 1 to 4, it's +4. So that would take my proficiency up from 1 to 5. So I need a 5 to score a hit. 5 to 8 is +2, and over 8 hex range, there's no benefit. So because we're firing up, it's at 5 hex range, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, in fact, 6 hex range, which is in range. You fire it up to double your range at half your proficiency, half your firepower. So, well, half of 1 is 0. So that's 0 +2 for in the open. So it's only a 2 or less for me to hit him. But for him to hit me, he's on 5 to start with. And that's within 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 range. Stays at 5, then obviously minus the buildings and such forth. But he's better shot at moving in the open against my guy sitting in a blinking building. There we go. Conscripts. So I did say I'll take an attempt to make my shot here in the open. I said I restrained myself, and that's purely why I restrained myself. So he went 5 firepower, -1 concealed, -2 stone building, requires a 2, and he rolled a 1. Neat. Now again, remember all these die rolls have been done on the axe system. So roll on the axe. It sends an email to both of us of what the actual die roll is, and then I'm inputting in the log as I'm playing it. Okay, so that means he got a success with a 1, which is the lowest you can roll. If he'd been at point blank range with a 1, that would have actually reduced my unit. Is that right? Yeah. Um, yeah, okay. And also this is where the casualties are coming, but again, I'll explain that when it sort of occurs. Right. He's mentioned that he's spent 6 operation points so far. And let me bring this up and show you what this means. Okay. So his operation is 3 to 9. My operations range is 3 to 5. That means he can activate 3 units or 3 unit points up to 9 unit points per turn per activation. And I can operate between 3 and 5 per activation. Now, units of infantry are worth 1 activation point. Guns and vehicles are worth 3 activation points. Anything under a concealed counter is also 1 activation point. That allows you to have your anti-tank guns do things for 1 activation. So when he's moving an infantry unit, it costs him 1 point. When he moves a vehicle on, it costs him 3 points. And he can use between 3 to 9 points. So theoretically, he could move 3 vehicles or activate 2 guns in a vehicle or 1 tank and 6 infantry. With my operation range of 3 to 5, I can operate 1 tank and 2 infantry or 5 infantry or something like that. But I definitely can't activate 2 tanks in the same turn because that'll cost me 6. I don't have 6. Again, showing the slight Soviet incompetence at this time of the war. That's pre-built into the scenario. The other thing you'll see on there is command points. He's got 2, I've got 1. And when we come to use those, I'll explain what they actually do. Okay, so he spent 6. I was querying, is he actually finished what he was doing? Okay, more units coming on. Also, at the top here on the bar, it's keeping track of how much stuff is activated. I can show that on there. Yeah, that button at the top there, which is actually very useful when you are doing the logs back and forth. You can lose a bit of track sometimes, but that all helps. More shots coming in. And that's again, firepower 5 becomes 6 because he decides to use a command point at that shot, which boosts the firepower by 1, that proficiency firepower. But it had no effect. Ha 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 ha. And he brings more stuff on. Again, taking a shot. And again, using a CP. He only has 2 for the entire turn. Okay. And I decided to fire that before he spent that. I decided to fire my weapon team. Revealed the weapon team and then fired it. And it causes suppression. So let's go through that shot. All right. I'm using, this is the actual, so weapon team at the target in E4, that one there. Firepower 5, again using the proficiency because this is opportunity fire. I use my proficiency firepower rather than my full firepower because I'm not firing for the full however long a turn is. But he's moving in the open, 2 hexes, more than 5 hexes away, but less than 8. Adds 2, takes my firepower to 7. I rolled a 6, so that suppressed him. He wanted to continue firing. He needed a roll of 6 because he needs to pass now a morale check to continue the turn. Again, looking at his unit there, he's got yellow suppression. Put that down because he got suppressed, and that changes his morale from 10 to 6. For him to do anything else now with that squad investment now passes 6 morale, which he didn't. So they're not interested in continuing. They're eating dirt. They actually rolled a 10. Okay. He has one last move, bringing on his weapon team, which aren't allowed to fire unless they're in a hard track. And then it's back to me. Okay. The guy that was sitting in the open here. Okay, let's just go back one step, show who I'm on about. This guy here, the one I didn't put in a foxhole, though I was planning to. Mr. Unpopular. Let's move him. He moves from there. That costs 2 to move in that building, 4. And he will gain concealment because no one's got line of sight on him. And when I went back through these logs, I realized I made a mistake there. I didn't mark him. If you see on the German units used, I didn't mark him, and I'm going to gain a benefit out of that later. Okay. Then I've got to mark machine gun is used because it fired and passing it back. And now he says a risky move. He's bringing on his Panzer IV and he doesn't know where my anti-tank gun is. And I'm not going to tell you guys until he gets revealed. Okay. So yeah, he's hoping that my anti-tank gun is not in that area. So let's have a look why. On a tank, you've got, again, quite a few values. The 7 and the 10 are the effects on... First, the 7 is the effect on armor. That's a kill number, effectively. The 10 is the effect number on infantry targets. And remember, this is the short-barreled 75mm gun, which was pretty much useful against infantry, not so useful against armor. The 2 numbers underneath that, the 4-stroke and the 2, are its armor value. So that's the effect of a shot coming in. We'll have to go through the front. We'll have to go through 4 points of armor. Then the 13 is its movement, and the 8 is its proficiency, which we'll come to later. Okay, so with my anti-tank gun, again, I'm not going to bring the counter up. Let me just bring this up. We look at on the... Can I zoom in on that? Yes, let's see. Okay, there we go. So my anti-tank gun has got a 7/6. 7 is the effect on armor, 6 is the effect on infantry. So if I did fire this at his tank, and I hit, which is determined really by the proficiency. Again, technically that's not true. The proficiency determines if I'm able to fire. The 7 is the ability, did I hit and did I penetrate? So say the proficiency determines I have to do a proficiency check to be able to fire in a few circumstances. We'll come through to that if or when it happens. But the 7 will go against his 4 armor. So 7 take a 4 is 3. 3 or less, it's a kill. We're not using any, what do you call it? Had a mind blank on English there. We're not using any optional rules. One of the optional rules is unconfirmed kills. We're not using that one in this. We're playing it pretty vanilla. So yeah, 3 or less, and I've gone through. The number after strike is the effect against infantry. Notice here that guns do have morale as well, whereas tanks don't. So that's my anti-tank, and that's why he's a little bit nervous, because it can kill him. It can go through the front armor, and even better, his armor in the side is only 2. So that would be 7 take away 2, 5 or less, boom. Thank you very much. So he continues with his tank, and he's targeting. Now, this is where we do the proficiency check. So he attempts to fire there. And that's where you've got this 8 comes in. German proficiency is pretty good on their vehicles. So he needs an 8 or less to be able to make the shot. And then you've got modifiers to that. So let's just bring up the modifiers. You've got gun and vehicle proficiency checks. So you must make a check before firing in the following cases. So not all cases do you actually have to do this check. There's only one check, but modifiers are cumulative to the proficiency rating. So he's firing at a target greater than 5 hexes away. No, so he doesn't have to worry about that one. If target marked move or fire using op fire or final op fire, target's not doing anything, and he's not op firing. It's down to him. If fire marked as op fire, no. If firing after turning within the hex or moving to a new hex, turning within hex is -1. Moving to a new hex is -4. So that takes his proficiency down from 8 to 4, and that will allow him to get the shot off. Did he make that check? Can't remember. Let's have a look. Proficiency after moving, he's a 1 to 4. He asked me to resolve it. You rolled a 1 on your proficiency check, so he made it. So that meant the effect then is at 10 -2 for the stone building that unit's in. So an 8, he will cause a hit. And he rolled a 10, which was a dud. Yay! So they skillfully brought the tank up, got it in the right position, got the right target on the shot, and absolutely fluffed it. Boom, a shell bounced off the wall. It was a dud. Continuing. Now he's bringing on some of his half tracks. He's got 2 half tracks coming on from this side of the board with anti-tank guns. This one's bringing in the 88. Now look at the kill on that one. Can you see that? 15. I mean, that's pretty much will go through anything. And a 10 against infantry. Still good against infantry. Absolutely devastating against vehicles, which you'd expect from an 88. Okay, because notice he marks the vehicles with the word moved on them. That means if I then decide to bring fire at them with an anti-tank gun and such forth, they're not quite as easy as a target that's been there the whole turn. It's a little bit harder to fire at them. Requires a proficiency check. Okay, and he brings his last anti-tank gun on. He hasn't unlimbered them, he just brought them on there. So he feels that he's quite safe there because nothing has fired at him anti-tank gun wise. Okay. Over to me. And I can do some shuffling around in my defenses. So I'm trying to move the squad in 18G2. Okay, so this is the one here that's been suppressed. Now, to be able to actually move him, he has to pass a morale check. If he wasn't suppressed, he'd automatically be able to move because his morale's 10. Okay, he rolls a 10, so he's not keen on moving. Must really like that building. So I decide to spend one of my command points. In fact, I've only got 1 command point to get him to move. So the command points do various things. His one he added to his firepower. My one I'm using to pass or retry a morale check on a unit. There are about 6 options you've got. You can use a command point to give you an extra movement point for infantry. Armor and guns don't really get to spend command points as infantry, though you can use a command point to go first in a turn with a unit for each command point, because the Germans go first each turn, so I could spend a command point to go first in a turn. And on his second roll, he rolled a 9, so he's like, nah, I'm quite happy here. There must be some really good art deco in that building or something that's interesting. So I moved the unit that was, as you can see, from here to here, and this is where I then cheat. I moved that one, and I shouldn't have moved that one because he was the one that was sitting in the road here. Moving to there. It's only as I've gone back on this log now that I notice there's a fruit on him. I'm like, oh man. So sorry, Pierre. My bad. But rest of them. So I'm trying to toughen up the defense here because I realise that I probably didn't have enough. Okay, and that actually ends turn 1. He's activated all of his units. I've activated all mine. So we then go through. So that's called the operations phase. We then go through a route phase. There was nothing that needed to route. melee phase. There was no melees. Reset. So notice, right? So let me just go back on that. All right. Smoke here is at -1. He's suppressed and he's suppressed. When it goes through the reset phase, level 1 suppression, which is the yellow, is removed. Level 2 suppression becomes level 1. And the smoke effect deteriorates. It's still not classed as open ground, so it's quite good cover still. But yeah, it's now just dispersing smoke. Okay. And then we're into turn 2 operation phase. I have the option to spend that. You get your command points back each turn. So I've got one command point. So I could go first with something if I wanted to. I decide not to. I'd rather keep my command point if I can. So he starts with his Panzer IV opening fire. And this time, because he's not moving, he doesn't have to take a proficiency check because he's also within 5 hexes. If he was more than 5 hexes away, he would have to. But it'll be only a -1 modifier. So we go straight to the effect, which in this case would be 10 -2 for the building is 8. And he rolls a 5, which disrupts them. Okay, well, he says disrupts, actually suppresses. Then his weapon team. Now look at the firepower on that guy. Firepower of 8. So the tank's got firepower of 10. Weapon team firepower of 8. Take away 2 for the building, makes it 6. Disrupts it again, or suppresses again. Now he's on red suppression. So if I want this guy to actually fire, he must roll a 2 or less on the morale check. And this is what I love about Band of Brothers. You do not break units, as in ASL. They become suppressed. That's as bad as the suppression can get until he actually is able to cause casualties. And casualties is normally caused when you are at close range or you are extremely lucky. Okay, so he's never going to be sure if that unit of mine can do something. Now, if you play an ASL and you fire and they fail a morale check, they break, you know you're not going to be targeted by them. They're done. Here, he's never going to be 100% certain. If he now moves in the open, I could declare that unit to fire, roll a 2, and boom, they actually do fire. They buck up the courage and fire. It's unlikely, because a 3 through to 10, they say but a 1 or a 2, they will fire. So you're never 100% certain. This also does help for solitaire play as well. You're never 100% certain. And I say it's one of the things I really, really like about this system. So what's he doing now? Oh, he's carrying on some fire. And you can see that one there. Now, we have our first casualty. Okay. So he's firing from this unit to this unit. Okay. His fire value is 5. No, sorry, 6 now because he's not moving. So it's 6. -2 for the building is 4. He rolls a 1. Now, if you can add, if we look at my guy, he's got that 3/6 as the last 2. That's their casualty number. If he can add that 3 to whatever he rolled, and it's less than the target number, he causes a casualty. So he rolled 1, plus 3 is 4. He needed a 4 or less. He causes a casualty on that, which flips the unit. So he's now reduced unit, hence that stripe. If you look at the degrade the values, and he becomes fully suppressed. So yeah, good shooting. Okay, move and fire. Again, there's no real point at me firing, is it, at this point? Because of that exact, my guy's firepower is shockingly bad. We're talking about elite German Panzer Grenadiers here facing conscript Russians, 1941. What do you expect? Okay. So he fired here. I'm going to try and fire before he actually gets to do so. I intercepted the log. I failed the morale check. So I kept the mark to misused. Okay, so now result his fire. Didn't do much. And I'm now going to start marking my units with op fires. And I start with 12C8. Okay, so you can see I put a little marker on them, op fire. What that means is I won't be able to move the unit, but I'm dedicated because I know he's got stuff coming on. This is turn two. His turn two reinforcements are coming on. I'm marking my units ready to open fire on the enemy. It gives me a bonus to my opportunity fire. If you remember my firepower of my squads, if that is a squad, is 4. Well, the proficiency, so it's on the other side, it's actually only 1, isn't it? By marking them as op fire, I've increased that to 2. Yay! Fantastic. Yeah. And I'm marking a few other units with op fire as well. So I've just marked a suppressed unit with op fire. I can do that. He hasn't been activated yet. So when I come to want to use him as op fire, he's got to roll that red 1 or less. Well, you can't roll that 1 or less. It's 1. So if he rolls the 1, he will then be able to fire at his full firepower available is his proficiency firepower, which in this case is only 0. Yay. But he's been lock fire, which makes it 1. And then if he's moving in the open, he gets other things on. The likelihood of him firing is 10%. But 10% is better than no percent if you're playing. I know I keep using the comparison ASL. Yeah, that's the thing, you see. So he's not a broken squad. He's still able to fight. How effectively is the question. Okay, and then marked another unit as op fired. Concealed unit. Is it a real unit? Is it a decoy? We don't know. Well, I know, but you're going to have to find out. And then I pass the log back to him. So he unloads one of his guns. Now, changes it facing, mark use, and he removes the half track. So this is another little thing I do really like about Band of Brothers. And again, using ASL, half tracks that carry infantry or carry tools and kit are removed once they're used. They're too precious to have running around the battlefield, blocking off route routes and such forth as you do in ASL. Okay. They can transport the infantry right up to the enemy front and such forth, but as soon as the infantry unload, or in this case, an anti-tank gun unloads, they're taken off board. What happens then is if they wants to reload that gun, the half track's brought back on. It just gets rid of the faff and about 25 pages of rules. Simple, elegant, and it works. Okay, and then you decide to adjust the facing on it, which is fair enough. Okay. And as I said, all I'm really doing is marking my units for op fire. So you can see this one. I think that one in that hex there is now marked. And that one's marked. So using my 3 command points, sorry, not command points, my 3 operational points to mark 3 units as opportunity fire rather than just not doing anything with them. Okay, so he now unloads the other gun back to me. I just did some more op fire markings around the board. Right, so he now decides to do some more fire. Range of 6, you can see there, range of 6, he's got 6 firepower at range of 6. It's a concealed target, so that'll be -1, and it's in a wooden building. It's another -1. Oh yeah, one of the things I like about Vassal. Boom, remove all the counters. Yay! Can't do that on a real board, can you? Well, you could, but it'll take your ages. Okay, no effect. He fires from there, same target. Okay. And then he starts bringing on his stuff from the northern border, northern front. Move and fire again. And again, same problem I've got from on the southern front. I could fire, but my fire is less effective than his fire. Him running in the open, moving in the open, is less effective than him firing at me in a stone building. Bloody conscripts. I think I've said that a few times. So I worked out the fire. It's firepower 5, -3 for the concealment and for the stone building. So he needs a 2. He rolls a 3, so no effect. Then it's back to me. And again, I mark more op fire opportunities. So he brings on some more dudes firing. They miss. And does he eventually get one of these guys to cause a casualty? Yeah, he finally spotted something in that hex there with his fire. Now, what's actually happening here? He's doing his moves on the vassal, and then when he comes to do a fire, he's going to the Warhorse Simulations axe die roll, rolls the dice, then inputs the result on the log and then carries on the log until his next shot. Meanwhile, we're both getting emails of those shots, and also he's seeing it on his screen as well. It takes a little bit longer than just pressing the vassal dice, but as I've said before, I don't like vassal dice. Okay, he's bringing in some artillery, I think. Oh, sorry, I've got the log down on the lower screen. Okay. Just as he's just going through the actual scores on the doors, and then passing it back to me. So I've got to reveal what was in that hex, and it is a squad, and it is suppressed. Marking some more units for up fire potential. Now he's got a Panzer II, which he doesn't want to risk just yet, so he's calling in some artillery. I think I said that a moment ago, but yeah, there we go. And then he's targeting various hexes, which he's rolled the dice for, and then I'm going to reveal in a moment what they actually are. So that unit that's just been flashed is he's found his first decoy. There was no one there. Okay. Next shot, it was a 4 versus a 6 that revealed and suppressed a weapon team. Next shot was the already very unhappy guy. He suppressed them again, but there's no further effects. They wasn't a casualty or anything. And that one there, he actually missed on the actual shot. The artillery's coming down. If I bring up the artillery counter, the 1/9, the 1's the effect on vehicles, the 9 is the effect on infantry. So it'll be 9 -1 for the wooden building, etc. So this artillery is quite pokey. So it's brought in smoke, and it's now starting to weaken my units. Back to me to do some more op fire. I'm now all out of units. They're either all up fired. So I tell him to bring on his Panzer. And there it is, Panzer II. As he put it there, funny to see how much we care about a miserable Panzer II piece of junk. Well, early war against infantry is pretty effective. Okay, so having a look at the Panzer II counter, 4/7. It's 7 firepower against infantry, 4 against tanks. Yeah, not so good. His armor is pretty mediocre, though. In fact, rubbish. But again, high proficiency rating. Those German crews are pretty good. So he's firing, at my weapons team down at the bottom there, which he's now revealed. So he has to do a proficiency check because they moved on the board. So he needs to roll a 5 to be able to make that shot. Um, 9 minus 4 for mood out, and because he's at longer range, it was an extra -1. It needs a 4 to roll, and he didn't quite make it. So he didn't fire there. Changes the facing because he realized he couldn't quite see with the facing he had. I thought he could, but I've got no problem changing the facing there. And then he brings on some more infantry, which fire again. Because I've got nothing to fire. So again, I could op fire here. And this is where sometimes with the vassal log, he'd brought that on and that on, but I was actually going back through his log. I'd say before you shoot there, I'll attempt to op fire with 12C7, which is those guys there. I thought, well, if this is his last sort of units, I might as well try and op fire with them. Okay. Morale 5. They roll a 9, so no, they failed. I will reveal a unit to try another op fire. I've got another weapon team, which I now reveal here. Okay. This is a slightly different proposition because they're not suppressed. So they automatically will fire. Check the line of sight, no problem. So weapon teams op fires with a firepower of 5, because it's the, where's my mouse? There it is. So again, you're looking at the proficiency firepower, which is 5, not the 7. Then is +2 for the open ground and +1 because he's already marked with op fire. So that takes it to an 8. So 8 or less, and I will suppress him. Now look at his casualty number there is 4. So if I roll 4 or less, I will reduce him. If I roll 1 or less, can't roll less than 1. So if I roll a 1 plus 7 is 8, I will kill him. That's what the second number after the slash is. So there's a potential here for a kill. Okay, I roll 2, which is not enough to kill him, but is enough to casualty reduce him, which is done, and he's obviously marked full suppression. So I got one back. Yay me. Okay. Now to check his morale, because he wanted to do the shot there. Morale of 1, roll 7, says no shot. I then passed it back to see if he wanted to bring his weapon team still on, because I still at this point have a command point. Okay, he still brings his weapon team on. I then say I will spend my command point to fire at your weapon team with the same unit. Another use of the weapon team. Normally, you can only fire the once, unless an enemy unit's adjacent to you. Then you can do, like in ASL, final protective fire. They call it final op fire in this. Same sort of thing. Unless you spend a command point, then you can fire out to your normal range. So I did spend my command point on my weapon team. So firing on his weapon team, firepower 5, no modifiers because it was beyond 8 hexes. So there's no bonus for moving in the open there. Okay, rolled a 10. So obviously they run out of bullets, or the barrel was too hot, so no effect. Okay, and that sort of finishes the turn. Now we're going to have a little bit of a problem with this guy because he's in the open and he's within 5 of an enemy. Okay, so, and he's not in beneficial terrain. We continue the game, but we did have a continual discussion about this guy. So I'll keep referring to him, and his resolution will not come until quite a bit into the third turn. So they need to pass a morale check. If they pass a morale check, if they roll that 1, they're fine. They don't. They roll a 5. So they have to rout. Okay. In actual fact, he rolled a 5, which is over his or equal to or less than his casualty number. 1 plus 4 is 5. So I had them as eliminated. Okay. He didn't, because he then spent his remaining command point on that unit. I continue setting up ready for the turn 3. I told him I'm not going to use my command point to go next, and then he brings him back on his next log. So and he went, I spent a command point on the unit. So he didn't rally them, but he did stop them being eliminated. Okay, and he's now doing some shooting along my front here. As I say, this guy, this is still not over. We're still going to have some more discussion about that guy. But he's doing some shooting along the front. Where is he going now? Okay, he's shooting my guys down the bottom here. Let's just take that back. Yeah. Firing all along the front there. Not having much effect. Keeps firing. He needs to try and get them suppressed so that he can move forward. He calls that a disaster. Okay, so we now go back to the discussion on the routed unit. Your unit that routed did not follow the rules, I said. Okay, all right. It must move towards beneficial terrain as you are in line of sight of my units. True. I put down the only option was this hex here, remembering he was here. And in actual fact, that's not true, because that would actually bring him, if he routed towards there, he'd be moving closer to these guys. So incorrect from me. I said I'll go through his log for this fire, so let's go back. It'll show all his shots again. But that unit of his is actually eliminated for failure to rout, or effectively routes off board. There we go. So going back on his shots down here, remember this is what happens when you're doing logs. Just skipping through quickly. There is one where he actually does something. So that hit there is an actual squad, and it was reduced. He rolled well enough to reduce the squad and fully suppress them. So he thought it might be probably a decoy. No, it was a real one. And he keeps firing. So he says, and I repeat that, he thinks he's had a disastrous shot. I said, you got one. So I said, passing back for the route determination of your unit. Confirmation that is now my activation. So he runs him off board. And that's when I mentioned, well, if they'd been in their half tracks, they wouldn't have had to route off board. A hard track sort of gives them cover. All right, he was obviously worried about the anti-tank gun, which he still hasn't found. Okay, but they would have counted as in cover and wouldn't have had to route. Yeah. Unless they were adjacent to me, then they would, or I had a unit at a higher elevation. But I'm just marking units again as op fire. Okay. He now brings some more artillery in. If you can see, this is marking. And he also fires the 88 and the anti-tank gun. So going through what it affects. The artillery, it finds another decoy. The big boy, the big gun, the 88. Missed that target. No, I didn't. Suppressed it. So you can see he's doing a lot of firing. Found another decoy just here in the middle of my defense line. And okay. I was sending him some, we were having a little discussion about half tracks. So more up fire placement from me, waiting for him for his big move. Is it going to be a big move? All right. So Panzer II moves on to the hill, awaiting my stuff to arrive on turn 4. Getting ready and in position. More shooting from his infantry. Is it effective? Not so much. I'm still concealed, still concealed. Okay. He eventually does get a shot off on this guy, which is another decoy. So he's now found 4 of the 5 decoys, or the 8. 5, 6, 7, 8. If I have 2 anti-tank guns, which he's still not sure if I have or not. Oh, shot. It's a miss too. I actually decided to try some moves. That needs a 6 to move. It's a weapon team, and it rolls a 5, so it can. And then I realized I'd marked it as op fire. That means it can't. If you mark it as op fire, that means it's effectively it's done for its turn. So I realized that myself. Move that squad back, and they're concealed. So they're out of sight, line of sight of enemy units. They can conceal. I move a weapon team from there to there, and then I check to see if he can see him, which he can, to see if I gain concealment. Because if he didn't see him, then I could have concealed him. So concealment prevented. Marking the units used. Okay. Then it's turn 3 route phase. Then it's the reset phase. You can see the double suppression becomes single suppression. And ready to start turn 4. So at the present moment, as you can see, he's still a fair distance shooting at my stuff. My stuff is starting to crack. Suppressions, casualties. He's had 1 unit removed, but we haven't come to grips yet. And I've got my turn 4 reinforcements coming in. So let's go back to me at the top. I'm back. Okay, so that was the first 3 turns. Me and Pierre are getting towards the end of turn 4. So what I want to do is get maybe turn 4 and 5, because they're now more involved. There's more units. As I say, I've got the units coming on. So I've got a T-34, 2 T-26s, and 5 infantry squads to arrive on the east edge. And remember, he's got to take out everyone in the village. So if any of those east edge reinforcements get into the village, they'll help the defense. Tanks don't help, so he has to get rid of them so his infantry can progress. However, the Russian tanks proficiency, if you notice the Germans there were 9. I think the Panzer IV was an 8. The Russian proficiency is 5, which is rubbish because if I move, there's 4 off straight away. So they'll only be able to fire on 1. And that's how the system reflects the quality of the Germans versus the Russians, especially, again, early war. I keep referring to it. ASL, a T-34 in a scenario, even in the early war, even with inexperienced crew, if any of you know what I'm talking about, is still a mighty, mighty beast. Whereas, because ASL focuses on the technical aspects of the vehicle. Banner Brothers, yes, the careful of the word, technical aspects of the vehicles are shown, i.e. armor, guns, penetration, etc. But proficiency is the most important, because without passing a proficiency check, you can't fire. Simple as that. So a German tank on the move with a proficiency of 9 takes off 4, it's still able to fire 50% of the time. A Russian tank on the move with a proficiency of 5, take away 4 for the moving, can only fire on a 10% chance. That is a massive difference. No matter what the technical skills of the vehicle, the armor, if you're getting a shot off, you're getting a shot to kill before the opponent can even respond. So my vehicles coming on have got to face that. But we'll see what happens in turn 4, which will be the next episode of this particular series. So I hope you enjoyed that. Again, the Vassal, I know it went back and forth a few little places, but that's because we're obviously playing it, discussing it, and certain things happen. I hope you got the flow. Any questions regarding the game that you want to ask, please do in the comments and I can answer them. I'm not an expert on the system. I haven't played it for quite a while. As you can see, setting up a unit in the middle of the open. And he still hasn't found my anti-tank gun yet. Yay. Willie, Woti, have I got 2? I'm not telling you guys. You can see it when it's revealed. But as I say, I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please click the like, and then also any comments, always much appreciated. And if you do enjoy what I do, subscribe. Again, it just spreads the word of my channel, gets other people that play these kind of games. It will come up in their feed or whatever algorithm it does. And if you really want to support the channel, you can become a channel member. Again, the link is in the description below. But until next time, play games, have fun. Bye, Internet.